So we just heard from Sean, CTO and co-founder at Ozo. I am Linus Håkansson. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Gravitee. And today we will also be joined by Anthony. Anthony, you just want to say name and title before we give the spotlight to you in a moment? Yeah, Anthony at Anthony at Decathlon. He's going to introduce himself. I put you on the spot there, mate. Sorry about that. He's going to introduce himself in a while and talk about how they run Kafka at scale at Decathlon in France and in the world effectively. Now, so I'll skip your slides here, Sean. We're going to do this a little bit special because what is a Kafka and sports meetup without a little bit of a competitive edge? So what I want is all of you to bring your phones up and try to scan this little QR code right here. I'm not going to ask for any PII information or anything like... What's that, Leo? The laptop is in the way. Sorry. Apologies. So there's going to be a competitive element. This first one here is not actually going to be competitive. It's just going to kind of get you guys started and see if this is the first time you're at the meetup or if you typically come to meetup like every week, or what's your experience with meetups really. But then as we go deeper in the presentation, there will be a competitive quiz. So we will have a leaderboard in the end. And did I speak to you, Sean, about providing a prize for the winner? Okay, we'll have to figure that out eventually then. What's that? So, okay, very good. So in the quiz, one thing to remember is obviously you have to get the right answer to the question, but the quicker you get an answer to the question, the more points you'll get. So you typically have around 15 seconds to answer, and you can just follow along in your mobile phone that you just scan with the QR code. You can put whatever phony name you want in terms of your name there. But the quicker you respond, the better points you will get. Did you won the last one, Elish, like we did? That was Benjamin, I think, yeah. So we see a lot of people actually that have been to more than 10 meetups, and 5, I think the QR code is a little bit away. 5 people, this is the first time. So welcome all of those that are attending a meetup for the first time. Well, we got some experienced people in the room. So now it actually starts. The first quiz of the evening starts now. We have 21 players ready, so we'll do with that. And I think I'll be able to hit this button right here. And remember, the quicker you answer, the more points you'll get. So where was Kafka originally developed? In what company was Kafka as a technology originally developed? Was it Facebook? Was it LinkedIn? Was it Uber? Or was it Netflix? A lot of mumbling in the room I can hear. People are getting nervous and getting competitive. So you have 2 more seconds to answer. Oh, wow, that was too easy for the crowd. Well, I am at an Apache Kafka meetup, right? So what should I expect? But yeah, very impressive. We're going to show the leaderboard in the end, so you're not going to be able to know how you rank until the absolute end, effectively. We're going to be doing this as we go. Now, my presentation before I hand over to Anthony is around productizing Kafka and implementing what we call Kafka as APIs program, focused on sports in this particular environment. As obviously Decathlon is a retail chain. So when we work with customers, and I'm going to introduce what Gravitee do and kind of where we come from in a few moments as well. There's a few different pillars that we typically work with for customers to make that successful, to expose and productize their Kafka data in a successful way. Just as a hands-up sort of thing, who actually does that today, out of curiosity? Who actually exposes their Kafka data to partners and to customers and maybe to internal teams that actually is outside of the central Kafka environment that you typically work in? Is there anyone doing that here today? Not really? Okay. So this is hopefully going to be inspirational to some of you. So I'm going to be talking about a case study today that does this. So one of the key things that we talk about is the developer experience and the customer experience of Kafka effectively. It's very important when you expose Kafka to your audience that you have a great developer experience. So typically, and the case study that I'm going to talk to in a few moments, let me sit down for a second, is doing exactly that basically. So what it does, it allows the end user to decide what type of protocol they want to use. Welcome everyone. Grab a drink and have a seat. And I'm going to be, well, you're going to get less points, so you're fewer competitors in the quiz, I think. But I will bring up the QR code for you guys because we're doing a little bit of a quiz here as well. So one important thing for a lot of people that we do this with is what we call protocol flexibility. So the power as an end user, as an end client of that Kafka data to decide what sort of protocol they want to be using. Is it going to be Kafka? Is it going to be REST? Is it going to be webhooks, so you get automatic information sent to you when there's an update in the cluster? Is it going to be something like a WebSocket or server-sent events to stream the data, maybe in a mobile application, for example? That flexibility is typically quite important when you build such a program. Then we have self-service discovery and documentation and access control. Basically bringing things typically, for example, in a developer portal, which a lot of people are accustomed to when it comes to, for example, REST APIs. The ability for an end user to see what are the events and topics that exist. What are the sort of access control involved here, or the different subscription levels? How do I get access to consume these different events and APIs effectively? And then we talk about standards as well. So how many here, for example, knows about async API? Hands up. So probably 60%. What about things like cloud events? Is that a standard that people have heard about before? We have David here, a couple of people. Very good. So if you're a developer and you're interfacing with something like Kafka, and you're outside maybe of the organization exposing Kafka, it might be very important to get access to standards and documentation to know how to interact with it, how to integrate it into your systems. Then if you are the entity exposing Kafka to your end user in whatever way that might be, things like security and compliance is extremely important. The ability for you to know who is accessing my different topics, what authentication and authorization do I have in place? Do I have granular access control on a resource level? Do I have maybe an approval flow when someone wants to request access to my particular Kafka topic, for example? And it's important that you have control. The ability maybe sometimes to rate limit based on a particular topic, or maybe a particular application that wants to have access to your Kafka data, maybe enforcing quotas, maybe doing things like encryption and data masking on your Kafka data to ensure that the data that the client interacts with does what according to your standards effectively. And that you have a governance layer in place so that you know that, oh, these applications, these customers, these partners, these other development teams are interacting with this sort of data effectively. They have access to this topic, they've subscribed to this different plans, and you can all see that in a visual representation effectively. And as I'm going to show you in the next part, a very important thing for organizations building out this API as programs initiatives is, of course, the business outcomes, because you can provide the most cool technology and the most secure and governed Kafka environment in the world. If it's not yielding actual business outcomes and revenue or better customer experience for you, it's quite useless, right? So the ability to actually see, how is the adoption of these events? Are we having a consumer lag? Are we having performance issues with some of our end customers? That is very important to understand if you're a Kafka or event kind of owner of this environment. And of course, the ability for your end users, whether, again, that is developer teams, partners, customers, to have the ability to maybe rate your events, maybe give feedback, raise a support ticket, give that feedback in terms of how your events and APIs are being used effectively. And obviously, the theme of this presentation is about productizing APIs in sport. It might be very important for things like monetization. Maybe one of my customers and partners are actually going to be paying for this service to have real-time Kafka access and get real-time information. I'm going to come and talk about a use case in the next slide. And maybe I'm exposing my Kafka internally to different teams, different business units, and I need some sort of a chargeback mechanism so I can basically take the incoming traffic and all the data, the payments I have to do to my Kafka provider, and know how to basically distribute that within my internal organization. So one of the companies we work with that actually delivers this is a leading sports league in the United States. So what they did during COVID, they had a big issue, as I'm sure a lot of sports companies have, which no one goes to our games because they're not allowed to go to our games because it's COVID, right? So they lost a lot of revenue, and they needed to find very innovative ways to make more money of what they effectively had already. So what they realized is, look, we have microchips in the jerseys of the players that plays on the court or in the field. We have a lot of data going into Kafka. In their case, it's Red Panda, that's the Kafka vendor that they're using, that has information about where the players are on the pitch at any given time, information about where they're taking a shot, where there's chances, their heart rate, a huge amount of information, effectively, that sits in their Kafka cluster. And as I'm sure you can imagine, there's a lot of partners and the teams as well of this league that wants that data. You have things like gambling houses that wants to have that data in real time so they can build new betting experiences, right? And maybe adjust the odds based on what's actually happening with individual players on the field. You have the different franchise teams that maybe want to have the data in real time to do player analysis, or maybe they want to do something to understand who they're going to be substituting in the game, for example, right? So you have a lot of real-time decisions and real-time information that is very important for that kind of sports league. So what they wanted to do is they want to really productize that data. So effectively what they did is they decided, look, we're going to give different partners and different customers access to that data in the way they want to. So you might have some gambling houses that maybe prefer using things like WebSocket or maybe service-sent events to stream that data in mobile applications and web applications. You might have other people that wants to have messages sent to them on a callback URL whenever there's an update for that particular player. And there's some that maybe wants to have that data accessible in real time using the Kafka libraries effectively. Regardless of how that data will be exposed to that partner or customer, things like being able to have those partners accessing the data, seeing the sort of APIs and events and topics that are accessible to them, subscribing to them, understanding what the payloads are, the schemas, and the sort of business outcomes that they can get by subscribing to that was very important. Their customers were already using a developer portal for traditional APIs, and they wanted to have the same experience effectively for interacting with their event-driven architectures. And having this ability to do things like filtering and control over who, what entity, what partner, what customer is accessing what data was very important for them. So what they're doing, for example, is they're saying, look, if you're this team, and if you have this entitlement with us, you're getting access to these topics, and for every game, you're getting access to these 5 topics for these teams or for this real-time information, and only those are going to get that information. So in real time, when data comes in through the topics, they're filtering and controlling what applications, what consumers are getting access to what data effectively. And it's also very important for them because they might have a lot of teams, a lot of partners that want this data. So to have like a self-service way for not only discovering, but also subscribing and getting access and requesting access to those Kafka topics is very important for someone like them. Okay, so now you have to wake up if you were sleeping because now it's quiz time. And for those that joined a little bit late, what I'll do for you is I'll bring up the QR code and you're starting a little bit. So me? Oh, there's a mic there, okay. That's what you call mic drop, right? So you have the chance now to scan the QR code, and if you win, the 2 of you that joined a bit late, Sean will give a special prize because you joined a little bit late, and then that's going to be very impressive if you win this. So I'll give you a few seconds to type in. So we have 30 players there. Very good. I'm going to assume, I see you're typing. You look ready now. Okay, we have 30. Someone dropped out. Okay, fair enough. Okay, are you ready? So remember, the quicker you respond, if you get the right result, the more points you will get. So I'll give you now. I'm going to read up the question as well. So what technology is intended to remove zookeeper dependency in the Kafka ecosystem? A little bit more technical, this one. Is it Flink? Is it KSQL? Is it the schema registry? Or is it Craft? What technology is intended to replace zookeeper? I see people laughing here, very confident that they know the answer. Okay, very good. So most people got this right. In the end, we're going to see who got it right the fastest, right? Because not everyone is able to use their thumb in the same kind of timing. Very good. Anyone that want to raise their hand, by the way, to really claim that they're already on the number 1 on the leaderboard? Oh, Leo looks very confident. Oh, very good. Very good. Oh, you look confident as well, even though you joined late. I like it. That's great. So Gravitee, who are we? So Gravitee, we're basically an API and event stream management company. We're probably most known in the market for being a leader, a Gartner Magic Quadrant leader in API management. So we're covering the entire life cycle around your typical APIs like REST APIs and SOAP APIs. designing APIs, exposing APIs in a developer portal, securing APIs with things like MTLS or OAuth2, doing transformations, rate limiting, schema validation on APIs effectively. Now, what we do that is quite unique, though, is we have this concept or terminology which we call event native. So what we believe is that API management vendors like Gravitee and IBM over here, should be treating event-driven architectures and event-driven APIs like Kafka and WebSocket and MQTT, whatever it might be, as first-class citizens in the entire life cycle of APIs, effectively. To have a gateway that can work with Kafka, Confluent, MQTT, AMQP, applying transformations, security, documentation, working with standards like async API, cloud events, having a management interface that can allow you to do exposing these sorts of things in a developer portal. That's kind of what Gravitee is about, and that's what we, for example, did with this sports league effectively. So I'm going to be talking a little bit of what we do there before I hand over to my friend at Decathlon. Last question. Spoiler: I'm not going to show who's going to be winning until after my presentation, so that you guys stay awake. So this is the last question. We had 31 players last time around, so I'm going to be waiting for 31. There we go. I think that's pretty much it. Are you guys ready?
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, final question. Name a schema format that can be used in a schema registry. So this is a free text sort of thing, so there's no voting. You have to type in something, and spelling is going to be quite key because unfortunately I haven't been able to give all the options there. So let's see what people get. Hopefully I'm not wrong, by the way, when I created answers here. Let's see. This is obviously not the only one, right? So, oh, someone said Arvo. Who said Arvo? No. Jamal. Okay. So if someone want to correct me here, please go ahead, but I think it's Avro, JSON schema, and protobuf, effectively, in the typical schema registries. Very good. So hopefully this eliminated some of the people that had all the rights on the first two questions. Let's see about that. So before I finish, I just wanted to talk a little bit about what Gravitee do specifically in the world of Kafka. So the use case that I talked about, this sports league that exposed the data, they use what we call protocol mediation. So protocol mediation basically means that our gateway, that basically is the bridge between a client and the actual service that you're protecting, has the ability to expose things like Kafka, Solus, MQTT, Amazon SQS, Apache Pulsar, a lot of different event broker technologies basically, but it's up to the API provider, the one that actually owns that data, to decide how the end client should be consuming that data. If that should be a REST API, if that should be a WebSocket or service and event stream, or maybe something like webhooks. The key principle here is that all the concepts that historically have been common for API management, like a developer portal, subscription management, analytics, logging, subscription control, should be applicable to the same regardless of the protocol that you use. So someone like that that US sports league might be deciding that they want to expose that through multiple protocols, and then let some customers choose, for example. So in the platform that we have, effectively what it looks like is if you're an owner of that event broker and that event data, you come in and you say, hey, I want to expose my Kafka or Amazon SQS or whatever it might be. I want to expose that as HTTP or service and events or webhooks or whatever have you. You can combine these different technologies. And then you have this concept that we call policies in Gravitee. So I think we have more than like 70, 80 policies. It's everything from validating a schema from Confluent Schema Registry to doing a transformation, maybe between Avro and protobuf, transforming the data, moving it to cloud events, doing filtering. So the sports league that I talk about would be using something like message filtering to dynamically decide what data should go based on a topic, based on a subscription key, based on something in the JOT token, decide basically who gets what data effectively. And then to decide how to expose that. Should it be with MTLS? Should it be with JOT, API key, different subscription plans based on how much money you're paying? Exposing it to a developer portal, for example. So that's what Gravitee do in what we call protocol mediation. Then we're also generally available in January, releasing something that we call a Kafka gateway. For those customers and end users that don't want to only use things like WebSocket and REST on top of the Kafka, they want to use Kafka as Kafka. So we're putting a gateway between the client and the upstream Kafka broker, whether that's Confluent, Red Panda, Avon, etc. So when an end client interacts with the data, their Bootstrap server is basically pointing to our gateway effectively. So you can expose your Kafka with whatever authentication scheme you want, regardless of what your broker is configured with, for example. And you can do everything that you've used to do in the last 20 years in API management, like routing across topics, rate limiting, quota management, subscription, granular access control based on a JOT token, documentation with things like async API, analytics like consumer lag and logging and everything that you can imagine effectively. So it looks something like this, very, very similar. You come in and you say, hey, I have a Confluent Cloud server that's configured with SSL plain, for example. I want the gateway to expose that using this server URL here and using OAuth, for example. And I want to apply this concept of policies where I want to say, look, I want to apply a topic creation validation policy that controls when someone tries to create a topic that they adhere to a particular naming convention, for example. Or I want to enforce a quota. Or maybe I want to transform the data between Avro and Protobuf or JSON schema. Or I want to do virtual topics so that maybe I have one topic called orders, but I want this client over here that has a factory in the north of France, for example, to have a dedicated personalized topic for them that automatically filters the messages. And when they connect and view the topics, when they connect to our gateway, they see another set of topics that actually exist in the Kafka clusters. There's a huge amount of interesting things there that we help customers with. But we also work with Kafka in what we call federation. So we acknowledge that a lot of organizations in the world already have API management solutions. They might have many event brokers. They might have Confluent. They might have Solace. They might have API gateways like Apache, Amazon, IBM, Azure, etc. And what we're allowing customers to do is basically to have Gravitee connecting to all those different systems, expose all of those APIs and events in one unified marketplace, one unified developer portal where anyone can go to and see, oh, here's an API that runs on Amazon. Here's an event that runs on Confluent. I want to get access to that. I want to see the documentation. I want to access that data. So you have one place for platform teams and architecture teams to basically view things like API scoring. So you can enforce different rules that, oh, in my organization, an API, an event needs to have MTLS security. It needs to have this documentation. It needs to have this sort of plan. So you can control what a good API, a good topic, a good event looks like. And you can build these kind of customizable dashboards and marketplaces for those kind of end organizations that wants to access your API and event data regardless of where it runs effectively. I think that was the last. Are you ready? Yeah. Let's see who won. It's like almost like watching Eurovision Song Contest or something like that, right? Dale! Giving a free Gravitee subscription, Dale. Very good. Congrats to Dale. I'm sure Sean is going to hook you up with a nice prize. Round of applause. Very good. And that's my part of the presentation. And now hopefully what you all been waiting for and what you all came for. My friend Anthony at Decathlon.